Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Shawn, and for my senior year thesis project at Georgia State University, I wanted to dive into adaptive reuse in the Atlanta area. The building is to be named the Stockade and will provide a new and interesting music venue to the Atlanta scene. My thesis question for this project is, how can I improve a music venue while also preserving a historic building? With all of the newer urban developments that are taking place in Atlanta, I think it's really important that we try and protect and preserve as many of the older pieces of architecture within the city as we possibly can. There's only a few that remain. So in these newer urban developments, I think it's possible that we can give new life to these spaces that would otherwise be demolished. By researching and understanding other music venues, I can better understand how specific elements could be implemented or eliminated to create the ultimate experience for not only the guests, but the performers and employees within the venue as well. When I started to look into the history of music venues, I found that the first known musical performances were by the ancient Greeks. They incorporated ascending style staircases in their arenas to amplify sound onto the audience. This concept has been passed down into modern prosceniums found in music venues, concert halls, auditoriums, churches, and more. Up until the early 20th century, almost all performance spaces required seating. When blues, jazz, and rock and roll became popular, people needed more open floor spaces so that they could dance to this less traditional music. Venues also started to incorporate separate rooms away from the performance area, such as green or dressing rooms, for the performers to prepare themselves and get ready. These smaller jazz, speakeasy style nightclubs really changed the course for musical performances and the spaces they inhabit. Nowadays, most music venues are generally large and empty auditorium-style spaces that feature minimal architectural efforts, such as stage lighting with truss, crystal chandeliers, and black paint. While these spaces are adequate for a performance, they tend to be large, open, cold, and pretty dark for the most part. I think that every guest should have the ultimate experience, and that includes having architectural details that really amplify how the guest experiences the space. In my research, I also found that new music venues tend to go one of two ways. They are either new builds and tend to be more cold and minimal, or they are more warm and traditional and fall back on the classic Art Deco style, which can be found in theaters and performance halls worldwide. In designing the Stockade, I wanted to create a venue that was really unlike anything else that existed in the city. In this adaptive reuse, I think it's important that there's a strong juxtaposition between preserving the pre-existing historical architecture within the building and implementing a more modern, up-to-date design scheme within the space. By incorporating new, up-to-date technology, light fixtures, sculptures, and other materials used within the space that are classic to the history of the building, can really accomplish this design feat. Due to the increasing population within the Atlanta area, urban developments are at an all-time high. Adaptive reuse is an excellent way to incorporate history into the newer developments for many reasons. These sustainable efforts, combined with the homage paid to the existing buildings, is an excellent way to introduce a novel design that benefits a local community. An enormous amount of materials can be salvaged and restored, thus not only saving potential costs, but more importantly, saving building waste from entering our landfills. Not only is adaptive reuse a more sustainable option within an area, In my research, I found that those who are involved in their communities find that historically preserved buildings are a special element that helps keep history and integrity alive in these neighborhoods. In all, this adaptive reuse can help a community in more ways than one. For my thesis project, I wanted to choose a location that had a lot of character, that was true to the city of Atlanta, that perhaps otherwise would be knocked down and lost in the history within the city. In Zone C1C, located at 750 Glenwood Avenue, Atlanta, Georgia, is the site of the original Atlanta Stockade building. Constructed in 1896 by architect Henry Collier, it was originally designed as a space for a hospital until it was repurposed as the new city prison. This three-story neoclassical Gothic Revival style building also features medieval towers, rusticated concrete, steel beams, concrete walls, and ceiling. The building is essentially fireproof. The pre-existing structure is composed of three stories, almost identically stacked on top of each other. The original building is almost 35,000 square feet and is now tucked away in the beautiful Grant Park Beltline district of Atlanta. The Stockade was vacant for over 20 years until it was later converted into low-cost apartment housing in the 80s. It is now vacant and ready for a new life. Our client wanted to keep the original name to the building and titled the new build the Stockade. The program for the Stockade will be incorporated by restoring and reconstructing the pre-existing building to create an extraordinary venue. The main entrance will be on the west side of the building. From the foyer, guests can either enter the lobby, where they will immediately access the box office and auditorium, or they can also enter the box office outside as well. The Stockade will feature a main stage with stairwells leading up to a second floor mezzanine space that overlooks below onto the stage below. Half of the second floor will be removed, and the structure will be reinforced to allow guests to move from one space to the next. In doing so, guests can move from the mezzanine to the bar, from the lower floor, upstairs, downstairs, and everywhere in between, allowing for a completely different experience from each viewing spot. The overall design will implement new materials with classically modern chic furnishings and decor to create a timelessly unique venue. This venue will provide spatial justice so that anyone within the venue can fully experience the show at any given point. The first floor, just over 10,000 square feet, features the lobby, box office, a smaller bar, the stage, the main viewing area, as well as a green room space for the performers, and storage. This space also features a space just at the back end of the auditorium for the sound and lighting staff to place their equipment as well. This floor hosts the main viewing area for guests as they enter the building. Restrooms are located just by the lobby to keep a maximum experience performance space within the main auditorium area. Overall, the first floor is a very open floor plan for guests to walk directly in and see the performer in which they came for. The design scheme for the lobby pays homage to the more traditional history of the building, while also incorporating newer, more modern elements as well. We wanted to keep a black leather in juxtaposition with a nice soft green performance velvet. And we also wanted to incorporate a mid-century modern chandelier lighting in the lobby as well. We included newer graphics of older inmates that were previously held in the older Stockade building, as well as a neon sign that reads, "It was all a dream," so that guests who enter the building can have a sense of freedom when they enter the space, as well as remember what the space was originally used for in the past. We found that immediately upon entering the space, it was important that the guests are familiar with what the space used to be, as well as get a feel for what the space has to offer. We wanted to give the city a new and exciting place where people can come and just let loose and have fun, really enjoy themselves in a place where they won't forget. This room truly sets the tone for what the rest of the design scheme has in store. As guests enter the main auditorium, they are immediately enter the stairwell, which can take them up to the second floor. Because most of the architecture within the building is going to be preserved, we wanted to add a really strong element that could also be considered more modern, that wouldn't take away from the classical architecture within the building. We teamed with 3M and a dichroic glass film cover to produce a sculpture over the stairwell that is parallel to the shape within the stairwell and complements it, but also creates a dynamic shape that gives the viewer and guest a really interesting experience as they walk up and around the sculpture. This is a timeless piece that is installed that will have a strong impact on all people who come into the space. As guests head upstairs onto the second floor, they immediately are given the option to go left or right into the lounge bar area or to the right mezzanine viewing area for the stage below. The second floor is 8,000 square feet and features the mezzanine, bar, a VIP area, which is the right side of the mezzanine, stairwell, lounge area, as well as storage, which is accessible to the green room and third floor above. On the second floor, we were really given a lot of design freedom to run wild with in the lounge and bar area. The Stockade used to hold blacksmiths who worked with a lot of steel and wrought iron, so we wanted to use elements of rust and wrought iron in the design scheme to pay homage to the historical past within the Atlanta Stockade building. The lounge will feature a custom-built, aged brass, continuous bar that wraps around in the lounge area upstairs on the second floor. Other elements such as wrought iron shelving and light fixtures will also be incorporated into the space as well. The lighting was a place for us to really have fun with more modern elements that were incorporated into the design scheme. By using these more modern light fixtures from Vibia and Mui, we were able to create a very high juxtaposition of new and old within the space. Although these lights make a very sharp modern statement, they will be dimmed so that they do not take away from the natural structure within the building. I wanted to keep the lounge warm as well as comforting within the space so that guests can have a place to gather and relax if they need to escape from the auditorium space. We wanted to keep the space warm by implementing darker leather tones, performance grade velvets, as well as local granite on table countertops. The space also features lighting built into the ground as well as in planters with trees to give the guests a very ambient style feel within the space. This design scheme in the lounge is timeless and should serve for many guests throughout the years at the Atlanta Stockade. Acoustic spraying and panels will be applied to the walls in this room as well. The lounge will also feature state-of-the-art lighting by Vibia, known as the Algorithm Moving Light System. This moving light system features over 300 moving lights which change color and suspend from the ceiling above. This is a subtle element that I wanted to add to the lounge that gives the viewer a very strong sense of playfulness, but is subtle enough to not take away from the architecture or the natural ceiling above. A few more elements that I wanted to incorporate into the design at the Stockade include scented vaporizing misters, which can easily be hidden. These provide a smell for the space in which guests will never forget. It is a pleasant, natural, harmless vapor that can be released into the air accordingly. Another service in which I wanted to include was projection mapping, in which artists can accordingly plug their graphics into, and our projectors will map them accordingly to the shape of the walls so that their graphics have a very interesting and almost 3D-like experience onto the guests. I also wanted to incorporate this jungle gym style structure created by Buzzy Space and put them into the medieval style towers of the lounges so that guests can have a more playful and interactive space to engage in. These implementations are more simple yet effective due to the fact that they do not take away from the existing structure of the building, and they will give the guests an experience in which they will most likely remember forever. In all, the Stockade brings new life to a once dilapidated and almost extinct building to Atlanta. The Stockade will feature modern as well as historical materials used within the design to create a space that pays homage to the history of the building and will give guests the ultimate experience for the future ahead. This renovation will be an extraordinary addition to the neighborhood, as well as an incredible place in which people will have an incredible experience. Not only will this project bring new life and identity to the neighborhood, but it will protect and restore one of the few remaining historic buildings left here in Atlanta, Georgia. The Stockade will be an intriguing and exciting new place that people will never forget. My name is Stephen Sean, and I thank you for watching my senior year thesis project.